Leinster had too much for an Ulster side that ran out of puff. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. So it was Ulster started this one pretty well. They actually get a penalty right off the kickoff. Henshaw pinged for playing the man in the air. Ulster kicked around about the halfway. They claimed the line out. Then they looked to go to the maul, but good work from Joe McCarthy, who fights his way right through the middle of that maul and turns it over. But Ulster's maul was probably one of the most potent weapons for most of the day. At times Leinster really did struggle to cope with it. Both teams probing in what was a very competitive opening. Leinster win a penalty for Izuchuku not rolling away. They go up the line into the 22, but they overthrow the line out, and it's a bit of a let off for Ulster. Ulster then have a scrum on the edge of the Leinster 22. They're under pressure in the scrum, but Timoney, he carries really well from the back. Izuchuku then makes a break, and they're almost in behind, but there's a hand in there, I think, from James Ryan, and it's not spotted, and Leinster managed then to turn it over. Ulster work it back into 22 after a decent line-out maul. They go wide to McCann. He gets them within 5 metres. They go back in field. Leinster, they're looking stretched, and Timoney charges for the line. We have a Timo check. On field is no try, and in the end he's held up by a combination of McCarthy and Ryan. Goal line dropout, but a warning sign for Leinster there. Then a decent kick from Stockdale, and Ross Byrne is all at sea underneath it. Line out close to their own line for Leinster as they kind of just let the ball, bounce and go into touch. Ulster compete, and it looks like, they might be in, but they've actually knocked the ball on. Good period for Ulster, but crucially, no points from them from those visits into the Leinster 22. Lowe and Osborne then combined in the middle as Leinster now start to stretch the Ulster defence. Forwards carrying hard as well, and they go through the phases and work it upfield. Ulster had been very competitive at the breakdown and very aggressive, but Leinster seemed to have gotten a little bit to grips with that. Then Izuchuku, though, he manages to intercept, and then Burns puts a nice kick with Leinster hesitant again at the back. Izuchuku has to go off from HIA. He doesn't come back, and he was a big loss for Ulster because he was a big part of why they were causing Leinster problems on both sides of the ball. We then have a period of kicking, both teams just looking for a chink and looking to get some field position. O'Brien with a good claim for Leinster. They move it infield through Josh van der Fleer. Then Furlong, just a lovely delayed pass, puts Osborne through a gap. He's in behind. Jameson gives the Park on the shoulder. Draw the cover, and Gibson Park is over to score, but he decides to ride the tackle instead. Luckily, once he kind of gets beyond that, he's got Henshaw out on the right, and this time the pass does go, and Henshaw is over to score, converted by Rossbourne for 7 points to 0. And then, it was all Ulster for the opening 20 minutes, but now they're the team that are trailing. Leinster begin to settle into the game now. Jimmy O'Brien with a nice carry. Then Henshaw drills a kick into the right corner. And, Ulster's turn now to clear the lines and face Leinster coming back at them. High tackle from Addison. Penalty to Leinster. Timo check, but it's clearly only a penalty. Byrne slots it for 10 points to 0. Ulster, they look to respond, but then there's a decent tackle from Van der Fleer that allows McCarthy to get over the ball to win a penalty. The gap, it's only 10 points. The worry for Ulster now is that Leinster, they're looking to stretch that lead, and we've seen it so many times before. Try to get to the 50-minute mark by scoring just before the break and just after. And I literally just finished writing that when there's a ball back inside from Byrne, and that puts Lowe away. He rides a couple of tackles and goes over to score, converted for 17 points to 0. Ryan Baird gives away a penalty for kicking the ball. Definitely would have been a penalty either way, because he then traps the ball with both of his feet. So I don't know what he was thinking. Ulster goes to the corner. answer them all. Leinster halt them before they drive over, but illegally. It's penalty advantage. They can't get over, and we come back for the penalty. Back to the corner by Burns. Ulster, they overthrow, but Sheridan was played in the air. Leinster get a warning, and it was actually Captain James Ryan who gave away the penalty. And there was a funny little cameo between himself and Andrew Brace, the referee, where Brace said to Ryan, "Oh, you're number 4, right? Because I think it was number 5." And Ryan just kind of sheepishly said, "No, I'm actually number 5." Leinster then compete, and they managed to get the ball. They get it off the field, and it's halftime 17-0, and that felt like a big moment in the game. It was similar to yesterday, where Ospreys had that period as well, just before halftime, where you felt like if they could have got over to score, maybe it would have changed how things came out in that game. And I think the same for this one as well. For Ulster, maybe felt a little bit aggrieved that with that many penalties given away from Leinster. I don't think a penalty try was on, but I do think the warning could have come earlier, and maybe you would have seen the Leinster player in the bin for the first 10 minutes of the second half. As it was, though, Cooney then started the second half, puts up a great kick into that Leinster 22, and O'Brien knocks it on. Henshaw, he's standing in front of him, catches the ball, so it's offside. Penalty. Ulster opt to take the points. Cooney makes it 17-3. Leinster then win a scrum penalty advantage after a Stockdale knock-on. They play that advantage, though. Some good play from O'Brien and Larmour to keep the ball alive. Ross Byrne then puts a crossfield kick over. Lowe half volleys it forward, then kicks on again before pouncing on it to score. So just some really good play from him. The conversion then hits the post, is 22 points to 3. And we then have a break in play for treatment to Stockdale. He collided with Stuart Moore, and he looked very groggy as well, as he went off to be replaced by Ethan McElroy. I thought, Stockdale, he looked good when he did have the ball, looked dangerous. And also, all this season as well, he's really come back really well. Ulster then, they go to the corner from a penalty. The Maul making ground, but then Porter pulls it down. We're playing advantage. Herring breaks off and then puts McCann over to score. Conversion is missed, 22 points to 8. Leinster then back into that Ulster 22. Larmour dancing to find a gap. Doris then goes through a gap, and Gibson Park is almost through, but he's scragged by Moore. Great defence from Ulster to deny them there. But Leinster keep coming. Henshaw breaks on the left, and then he puts Lowe through a gap. But good covering tackle from Lowry, and the ball is dislodged. But Ulster doing a lot of defending at this stage. They then string some decent phases together, but the problem is they're still in their own half, and when they do finally get into Leinster territory, they knock the ball on. And you feel like, it's not just, they were talking about in commentary, Ulster have to get the next score. It wasn't. Ulster had to get the next 2 scores, I felt like, to build some kind of momentum for comeback. And, any Leinster score from now on is just going to make that mountain feel completely unconquerable. And just as Ulster look like, they are building that little bit of momentum and a bit of territory, Leinster then strike. Ulster were looking tired in the backfield as they collected a kick. It's past to Addison. He puts up a bomb and he goes on the chase, trips over his own player and is down. And I don't know why the commentators didn't notice that, because they were talking about, he's looking for the referee's whistle, but he very clearly ran into his own player. So what would the whistle be for? Then Leinster suck in the Ulster defence. Good work from McCarthy and Doris with some really good carries and some nice offloads as well. Then they go wide to Larmour and he scores in the corner, converted for 29 points to 8. And at that stage, you're just thinking, that the game is done now. McCluskey, though, offloads from, there's a scramble following a high kick where the ball kind of pinged around a little bit. He then gets his hands on it, offloads nicely. Ethan McElroy puts a kick in behind. Moore is level. We have to have a TMO check for that, but I think they're probably right. and he gets there first to score, converted for 29 points to 15. Leinster then work it back into that 22. They're stretching the Ulster defence, pulling them left and right. Henshaw and Van der Fleer with some really good carries. And then once it's sucked into defence, Osborne out wide, he puts it onto Van der Fleer, who just trots over to score. Rossburn converted for 36 points to 15, and that was just before he's replaced by Sam Prendergast. Leinster then, they win a penalty, go up the line, overthrow, but Prendergast is first there. Baird then with a good carry, and then Maloney, he crashes through and just about reaches out to dot it down on the line, converted for 43 points to 15. Prendergast then just produces a great bit of skill. First of all, a little dink of a kick over the defence. He's there first, doesn't catch it, he volleys it then over the cover, and Max Deegan collects it. And it just shows like the raw talent that this guy has. And, for me, he should have gotten way more games than he did this year. And, looking at who Leinster picked for this game, you had Rossburn starting, you had Prendergast on the bench as the 10 cover, and Frawley there as general backs cover. I think that's about the right way. And if it was me, I'd just go, right, Harry Byrne, I know you don't want to go, but you're out the door, son. Because for me, his injury profile hasn't been great. There's been lots of talk about how he has a higher ceiling than his brother Ross, but if you spend most of the season getting treatment, you're not going to hit that ceiling. So there's no point in him having that massive ceiling and not being able to get the game time that he needs to do that. And it's not just the injuries, it's the fact that obviously the appearances for all of those guys have to be managed through the season, and it means that for games where he's been slated to play, he's been injured, and then in other games then he may not even feature in the squad because it wasn't on the kind of it wasn't his turn, as you might say. So I'd love to see him go to another province and do well there. I think he is a talented player. I don't think him or his older brother Ross are the solution for Leinster really long term. And having both of them there, some people would say it's a luxury. For me, it's kind of a bit of a roadblock for the guys that are coming in behind them. So hopefully they can find a home for him, and he agrees to go there as well. We'll have to see though what actually happens. But David Humphreys certainly will have that on his mind about moving at least one of those Leinster 10s out of that squad for next season. But from here then, Lowry then shows some good pace to finish in the corner after some nice hands across the 22. He's under pressure from Frawley, but he gets in there for the consolation try right at the net. Conversions misses, 43 points at 20 is our final score. So we're going to look at the stats, and then we'll have a quick talk about each of the teams. So the stats, for whatever reason, the stats have decided that there were 0 tries scored in the game. Obviously, that's not true. Tries were actually 6-3 in favour of Leinster. Possession 54-46. Leinster with most of the ball. Clean breaks 14-8, and defenders beaten 27-15. So Leinster, being the more incisive really on attack. Offloads 9-4 as well, and Leinster's offloading game actually working pretty well for them. There was a lot in the kind of the build up to the tries for them. Then on defense, territory 48-52. So Ulster edging that. They had 2 big periods of possession in the Leinster half, but didn't actually score in either of them. Their scores actually came at other points in the game. Number of tackles then 133-141 just shows you how the game kind of swung back and forth through the game. Then missed tackles 15 for Leinster, which is decent for them, and 27 for Ulster. Then tackle success 90% for Leinster is just, for them, is superb. Like we saw 94% from both teams I think in the game yesterday, but for Leinster, compared to where Leinster normally are in their tackle success, 90% is almost comparatively up to the same level as well. 84% for Ulster is definitely below par, and that's where you'd actually expect Leinster to be, is around down there around about the 84 percent mark. So Ulster, they're, I won't say that the defense let them down, because they defended really well at times, but when it mattered, Leinster were still able to crack them open. Turnovers won is 0-0. That's absolutely wrong. There's definitely been a few turnovers in the game, so that's one stat that's definitely wrong. Kicks retained then 4 each, and there was a point in the game where it felt like Ulster were getting good change out of their kicking game, and the problem was then they had that, and then they had that period where they were right in the corner and they were trying to score, and then into the second half, then they never really got back to the point where their kicks were causing as many problems for Leinster as they did in the first half, and that kind of really stymied them in terms of trying to get any kind of momentum to get back into the game, and then Leinster then started pulling away. Anyway, again, penalties conceded said 0-0. Come on, like, somebody update these stats properly. But I don't know what the penalty count was, and apparently we don't have very many individual stats either, but the ones that we do have: successful carries 8 for Larmour and 8 for Timoney. I thought had a really good game. Clean breaks then 3 for Larmour. He's this whole year he's been brilliant for Leinster. There was a point though in the game where he'd beaten someone, and he actually had space on the outside in the wing, and he decided instead to cut back inside. He had to beat the same player again and get back into his support, where I thought like he could have just backed himself and gone for that space. But otherwise, I thought he had an excellent game. 3 clean breaks for Dave McCann as well. Another great performance on the Ulster side. Even though Ulster were kind of beaten well, there were still some decent performances there, and that's what kind of gives you heart, I think, for them for next season. Defenders beaten then 7 for Larmour, which is amazing, and then 4 for Stuart McCluskey. Meters made, Jimmy O'Brien was 65 and Will Allison was 68. Then offloads 4 from Jameson Gibson Park. That's, you don't see him offloading too often, certainly not that many. And then 1 for Izuchukwu. Onto defence then, number of tackles 19 for Doris, he put in a real shift, and 15 for Greg Jones, who came on for Izuchukwu. So we're going to just briefly talk about each of the teams then. So Ulster, they had all that pressure in the opening quarter, but they didn't score, and that's something they're definitely going to have to fix for next year. You have to. It's better for a team to have less entries into the 22, but be more clinical. Because it gets to that point where if you get so many entries into 22 and you're not scoring at all, it has a very negative effect, kind of on the confidence and mental state of the players. And then they kind of get desperate just to get over and get the score, and then that's where mistakes creep in as well. So something that they definitely got to fix is being calm when they get into the 22 and spotting where those gaps are and then exploiting them. That's what Leinster did a lot better than Ulster felt today. And then Leinster got that lead, and Ulster just always chasing the game from there. And against this Leinster side, you don't want to be chasing them. They put massive pressure on them at the start, and we know that if teams can do that and they can sustain it, then they have a chance. But Ulster just weren't able to sustain it. But it's been a great turnaround in their season since Richie Murphy has gone in there, and I feel like they should improve for next season. There's lots of young talent in there. Hopefully the injuries aren't too bad, and we do see them take a step forward next year. Leinster, they looked a bit shaky in the opening period, especially under the high balls, where players were just leaving it for each other and just letting balls bounce, and against another team, maybe they would have conceded in that opening 20 minutes. But when they got their chances, they took them, and then they built that lead. And I did kind of predict kind of what was going to happen, but again, it wasn't kind of Nostradamus kind of stuff, right? I predicted that if they were leading by a couple of scores around about that 50-minute mark, that then the bench would have an impact and help them kill the game off. And that's pretty much what happened. And that's what I said in the build-up, is that that's what this bench is for, or it's, and I don't mean it in the terms of that's what the plan is. I just mean that you look at those players and their skill sets and what they offer to the team, and it's that ability that when another team are kind of pressing too much and overstretching themselves, they're very good at being opportunistic and just taking their chances and finishing a team off by getting in there, being reactive, getting to the ball first when it breaks, and then looking for where's my offload, where's my pop from the ground, who am I going to give the ball to, and at the same point, another player is thinking, he's about to win that ball. I need to get there to support, to receive that pop, and that's what we saw today from them, was the positive impact that they do have on games when Leinster have that couple of scores lead, and the opposition are not necessarily throwing caution to the wind, but they're not thinking, we're gone beyond the point where the opposition are thinking about kind of building a score through penalties and getting into position and blah blah blah. They're basically looking for something to spark them, and therefore they take a little bit extra chance than they would normally, and that's where I think this Leinster bench really does have an impact, and we saw it again today. It was a decent win for them, I felt, but they're really going to have to step it up a couple of notches for that semi final against the Bulls in Loftus.